Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to take a look at Pendulum. This is a 1 to 5 player game published by Stonemaier Games. This is a real-time game. Real-time games aren't really my thing, but let's go head down to the table here, see how this game plays, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is Pendulum. This is set up for 5 players, but you can play between 1 and 5 players. And there's a rule book just for the autonomous, so single player, so you can play this game solo. And if you play this 2 players, you're going to have a third player in each of these areas just blocking them. And I'll show you what that means in the game in a second. But just know that in the lower player counts, you're going to have some of these areas that you'll have to use your grande worker to go to. But the game here can be played timed or untimed. Now, if you play it untimed, you're going to use this timer track to keep track of when you need to flip things. If you play it timed, you're simply going to, when a player wants, which is very important, flip these over to the next area. Once this purple one goes through all 4, you begin a council phase. At the end of the 4th council phase, the game ends. Now, throughout the game, you're going to be going to different spots and you're going to be performing the different actions. When a timer is in a location, you can only perform the actions there if your little guy is actually in one of these places. Now, before we go over how that works completely, I'm going to notice you have the player boards here. The whole point of this game is to be able to get all of your markers over to this. In order to even qualify to be able to win, you have to be able to get your little legendary marker over. And the way you're going to do that is meeting these goals over here and taking this little silver star here. When you meet these goals, you don't have to actually spend these resources, you just have to have them. And you will either get the star if you want, you don't have to, or you'll get the reward on the bottom. If you've already gotten your star here, then you can't actually take it again. You'll have to just take the bottom reward right there, or you just may want to just take the bottom reward. This will refresh at the end of every council phase, so this will refresh 4 times. So you have 4 opportunities to get it, plus there's a card in here that helps you at the very end if you didn't have it. The person who wins the game is the person who has all of their markers over in this area and the farthest over. If everyone didn't make all their markers get over there, the person who has theirs closest to getting over to that line wins. If there's any ties, it's broken in the prestige order up there. Now, one thing to remember again, that if this gray one isn't moved over, you can't win the game. If all players haven't been able to move it over, no one wins. You're limited to 10 different resources, except for one exception throughout the game. You're going to start the game by looking at your mat and seeing what your starting resources is. Like, I have a grande worker and a regular worker. I get no votes. I get one, let me get the names for these here exactly. So the columns you're trying to get up here, you're going to have your power, you're going to have your prestige, which is the blue, and then you're going to have your popularity, which is yellow. And this is really your legendary achievement. To get your legendary achievement, again, you have to get that silver star. You also have power, culture, money, and votes. Now, throughout the game, you're going to be getting your resources in and out of this. You can only have a max of these 3 resources down here, but let's see, move this over a little bit. These 3 resources down here, but you can have as many votes as you want. The game comes with, you get these extra 10 markers on here, and if you run out of those, you can substitute for whatever you want. You don't have a limit on votes themselves. In addition to this, each player is going to get a player mat they're going to pick from. The player mats are going to have two different sides to them. Normal side and then like a epic side here. And each of them are going to have their own little deck. This own little deck here are cards that you could play at any time during the game. And when you play these cards, you will set them face up or down, doesn't really matter, in this scar pile. In order to get them back, you have to pay what it says here. So in this case, I'd have to pay 5 of these blue cubes in order to be able to draw my cards back in my hand. One thing to remember in Pendulum, there isn't really turns. Everyone just goes at the same time. And for the most part, there's very few conflicts in the game. One thing you have to remember in these areas when you're placing things, so I can only place where the time marker is not. Only one of the small workers is allowed in each of these little blocks here, but any number of grande workers can be in here. So that's why it's important, if you're playing with the lower player counts, you have one of the colors that players aren't playing, the grande workers go in some of these spaces, means that you can only place a grande worker in there. So again, if you can only have one small worker in there and everyone else has to be a grande worker. So you can place, remove, or whatever as many times as you want for areas that are not where the timer is. For areas where the timer is, so let's say this timer is here, once the timer flips over and goes into this area and locks it down, what you can do here is you can't place any more workers, but you can move them down and get the reward on here. Now you have to pay the amount. This one's free, you just get a vote, but if I was over here, I'd have to pay 4 power. And if I pay 4 power for this one specifically, I can get one of these locations. Now this one here will give me a resource of my choice. This one I'll explain in a second for production, but if you get a territory, you pick which one you want, and then you're basically going to pick which little side that you want on here. And when you pick your side you want, you're going to look at the background color of this, and it needs to match one of these. So let's say I pick the gold. I'll put it down here. And now this area, when I do production, will produce me 3 gold. There's no real limit to how many you put in here, but just know at the end of the council phase you have to discard down to 2, no more than 2 in any row. In order to do productions, you're going to have to pick these little slots right here, and when you do, that area is going to fire off. So if I went here and then moved down when the hourglass got over here, I would get my 3 money, and I put them in there. You don't have to replace these tiles on here if you don't want, but any player can at any time. So you could just leave it and let another player flip them over, or just never flip them over. And again, we're going to go over like the timer track. This is going to tell you once everyone's completed putting down or moving what they want. This track is these are going to tell you which timers flip. At the end of this one, you do the council call. If you weren't doing that, again, this purple timer is going to tell you what to happen. It's going to come down, it's going to flip, you're going to knock this out, and then when it flips and gets back for the last time, that tells you your council phase begins. So didn't go over a lot of what all these do, but a lot of them are pretty straightforward symbols. The book does have a really good explanation of every single one of these, but I think it's very intuitive. The only odd ones at all were basically these ones, which do production. Other than that, I mean, these ones will let you move up 2 points on the sun, your little track right here. These ones will let you, like this, that's production, and this one will give you a vote. This one will let you go up in power and give you 2 votes. So it's pretty straightforward in there. And if there's any conflicts or whatever, everything gets resolved in this prestige order up top here. The other thing with this prestige track, if you can see on here, is at the end of the council phase, once all the votes are in and the order set, everyone gets the rewards put up here. Like this one can get a power, it could get basically one of any of these 3 twice. And this one can get one of any of these 3, this one can get one of any of these 3, and this one gets just those cards. So throughout the council phase, once that's done, players can, before the council phase starts, can complete all their actions. Doesn't matter if the timer's running out or anything. Just complete all the things that they want to do. Once everyone's completed all the things that they want to do, the council phase starts, and the council phase is going to basically refresh the board, reset that prestige track. You're going to clear out, you're going to be able first, before actually all this clears out, you're going to be able to claim some of these. And some of the cool ones in here are going to be this one here, which is permanent. This one you can upgrade one of your workers to a grande worker. This worker goes away. You'll never get this worker back, but you get that grande worker who's up there at the beginning of the game. First person to do that, this flips. At the end of the council phase, it flips back. All these other ones are fairly straightforward, although they are explained in the book. Like this one, if it has a lightning symbol, that happens immediately. Like you'll get your production for your purple stuff. If it has this little star symbol, it actually goes into your hand, and you can play it with the rest of your cards. And again, they go into this discard pile, and once you pay that, it comes back to your hand. After everyone's selected what they want, this actually gets cleared off. This, if it was flipped, gets flipped back, and 5 more come out. You'll know it's the end of the game because you'll get, on the last round, you'll get to these red cards. They'll flip over, and in this one, this guy, 10 resources, is, and you do have to pay this, is the great way to get your legendary reward if you were missing it. And like this one here, you can pay 5 to get move up 5 blue. This is a good way to get some of these things out of the way that you did not complete throughout the game. Again, your whole point is to get over to this side and as far over as you possibly can. Another thing to point out is that if someone grabs this star, they hold on to it. No one else can get their legendary reward until at the end of the council phase, this goes back. And the next round, this gets flipped over. And the next round, someone else can get that. So in a nutshell, really briefly, that's just an overview of how the game plays and what you do. There's a lot of really good rule tutorials out there. This is just give you an idea of what the game is and how it plays. So let's go ahead back up to the table here and I'll give you my final thoughts. So that was just a brief overview of how the game plays. Not rules or anything, just overview on how the game plays. I dislike time games intensely. They are my least favorite type of board game. This game, however, is my first timed game that I like, and I'll tell you why. So what I don't like in time games is that frantic, like, just everybody sort of spoons style game where everyone's trying to grab in the middle and do different things, or you have a time and everyone's going to be yelling at you because you need to make your move quickly enough, like in Magic Maze where you have that little meeple that you pound into your table until you ruin it. This game doesn't have this. In fact, the time portion on this game really seems more like a way to try to alleviate player AP and keep the game moving. And you don't even have to play it timed if you don't want to. You have that time board there where you can move the timers once everyone has made their decisions and just go on it without being timed. And you can add or leave that in the game. So if you like the time portion, but you want the last round to not be timed, fine, go ahead, do it. Really great. And the additional thing is, the other thing I don't like about time games in general is having to watch the timer to flip it or whatnot. In this game, you don't have to watch the timer to flip it. The only time you could just let it go. Like, you could just let the timer flip and be out of sand and just be done and just not move it over. Any opponent or yourself can move it to the next section, which is something you're going to want to do because you're going to want to be able to either place your meeples in those areas or pull them out and get those rewards and stuff. So you're going to want to do it, but you don't have to watch the timer. You don't have to be beholden to having to maintain these things all over the board. And I also like how the timers have different times, like the 70, like the what is it, 45 seconds, 2 minutes, and 3 minute timer, or something like that. Maybe it's a minute, 2 minutes, and 3 minute time. Either way, I really like how this game handles the real time aspect for a timed game. It does what I would think be the only, for myself, for just me, for myself, the only way that I would want a timed game to be implemented. So great there. Great strategy in this worker placement game. I like all the different things you can choose from. I like the light asymmetric powers each of the players get in the game. It's just great. Adds to a ton of replayability in the game with the two different sides that you can pick from, and you have a good bit of characters to go through and play. Also, the goals are random in there to be able to get your star in there, and just great game. I like how it handles the worker placement in there. I like gaining the extra meeples throughout the game. You can never have more than 2 grande workers, but I like getting that grande worker. But you can have a couple more of the smaller workers in the game, which are nice. And I like how, again, it treats the time thing where you could just take it or leave it. You still have a great game there. Component quality is amazing, just like any of the other Stonemaier games in there. I like the linen, I don't know if it's linen finish, but the nice finish on the player boards. It's a linen finish rulebook, which is really nice. I really like how high quality the rulebook is. It's just something that's just going to be sticking around for a long time. The components itself are really nice, thick plastic. This game's just going to last forever. The timers are really high quality timers. Sometimes in these time games you get those really cheap, really cheap timers in here. These are really nice timers. I think they're going to keep their time at, really accurately for the most part, at least enough for the game, and last a long time. And I like how they you put the extra base on the timers themselves, so that it has a wider base on there, so it's easier to sit down. If they didn't do that, the timers would probably fall over a little easier. Overall, if you loved real-time games, you want to check this out. If you don't like real-time games, but you like Euro games, and which is basically worker placement games, and you like the Stonemaier line, I also highly recommend checking this game out. Because like people like me who don't like time games at all, actually do like this game. So I think it's worth checking out, even if you're apprehensive about the timed parts. So that's my thoughts on Pendulum. Thank you for watching.